Tonight, the scientist, who has solved 6 cases using only rootless hair, heard about the evidence in Nancy Guthrie's home and used one specific word. The FBI asked for that evidence 2 months before it arrived. The lab that cracked the Gilgo Beach case is now believed to be involved. And Kim Kardashian just said what millions of people are thinking. This is 2026. There is nothing that is mind-blowing. Here is what is actually happening and why the science moving right now may be closer to a name than anything this investigation has produced in 121 days. April 16, 2026. Brian Entin opened his program with a statement from a source inside the investigation. Some DNA evidence from Nancy Guthrie's home has been sent to the FBI's lab for advanced analysis. The evidence includes hairs found in Guthrie's home. Within hours of that confirmation, CeCe Moore, one of the leading genetic genealogists in the United States, was on camera. Brian Entin asked her what she thought. She used one word: excited. A scientist who has spent years inside forensic laboratories analyzing the worst things humans do to each other. A woman who has helped identify killers from evidence that every other investigator had written off as useless. She has solved 6 separate cases where the only physical evidence was rootless hair, the same kind of hair now sitting in federal analysis. And when she heard about the Guthrie case, she did not say promising. She did not say encouraging. She said excited. That word is not casual. CeCe Moore does not get excited about evidence. She gets excited when she sees a path, when the data in front of her has the shape of something that can be read, when a technology she helped build is being applied to a case where it might still make a difference. She is excited because she can see where this goes. This video is about where it goes. To understand why CeCe Moore used that word, you have to understand exactly what Brian Entin confirmed and what it means forensically. Entin is the senior national correspondent at News Nation. He has been closer to this investigation than any national reporter since it began. He was physically present in Tucson during the SWAT operation. He was inside the perimeter while a federal search warrant was being executed. He has spoken with investigators, profilers, forensic experts, and sources inside the case for 4 months. When he confirms something, it is not from a tweet or a rumor. It is from people who are actually working this. On April 16th, his source told him 2 specific things. First, hair was recovered inside Nancy Guthrie's home, not on the porch, not in the garden, inside, in the space where Nancy lived, where she slept, where she spent the last hours of January 31st before whoever was at her door in the pre-dawn darkness of February 1st made their move. Second, that hair was not initially sent to Quantico. It went first to a private laboratory in Florida, DNA Labs International, the lab that Pima County Sheriff's Department routinely contracts for evidence analysis. That lab processed it for weeks. Then it transferred the original hair sample to the FBI laboratory for more advanced testing. Why did it leave Florida? CeCe Moore answered that directly. Her exact words: DLI has been working to refine their own rootless hair analysis, but I haven't seen any successful cases from them yet. The Florida lab tried. It could not finish the work because the hair does not have a root, and rootless hair, until very recently, was considered forensically useless. For decades, every American forensic textbook said the same thing. Rootless hair cannot give you a DNA identification. A hair with a root contains nuclear DNA, the complete genetic blueprint of the person who left it. A hair without a root contains only mitochondrial DNA, inherited from the mother, shared by everyone in the maternal line. It can tell you what family someone came from. It cannot tell you who they are. That was the limit. For case after case, year after year, rootless hair was collected, cataloged, and ultimately set aside, useless for identification, useful only for eliminating people who clearly did not match the maternal line. Then a geneticist named Dr. Ed Green, working out of the University of California, Santa Cruz, built a technology that changed that calculation. He developed a method for extracting single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs, from the shaft of a hair without needing the root. SNPs are the small variations in the genetic code that distinguish one person from another. They exist in the hair shaft itself, in the ultra-short DNA fragments inside the keratin. The challenge was extracting enough of them to build a profile detailed enough to work with. Dr. Green solved that challenge by adapting paleogenomic methods, the same technique scientists use to extract DNA from remains tens of thousands of years old. The approaches developed for ancient DNA, refined over years of research into Ice Age specimens and early human migration, turned out to be exactly what forensic science needed to read a hair that had no root. He founded Astrea Forensics in San Francisco to commercialize and apply this work. And CeCe Moore, who had been doing genetic genealogy work since before it became the technology that caught the Golden State Killer, began applying it to cases that conventional forensics had abandoned. The results were documented in the Gilgo Beach serial killer case. Rex Heuermann had been committing murders since 1993. His victims' bodies were found along a stretch of Long Island Beach. The case sat cold for over a decade, and then rootless hair recovered from the burlap sacks the bodies had been wrapped in was sent to Astrea Forensics. Dr. Green's laboratory extracted SNP profiles from that hair. CeCe Moore ran those profiles through genealogical databases. Family trees were built. Branches were traced. A name emerged. Rex Heuermann was arrested in July 2023 and pleaded guilty on April 8, 2026. Guilty to murdering 8 women between 1993 and 2010. 11 years of silence, broken by a technology that did not exist when the crimes were committed. That is the technology now being applied to the hair recovered from Nancy Guthrie's home. Here is the detail that changes how you read everything that came before it. On April 21, 2026, Ben Williamson, FBI Assistant Director for Public Affairs, posted publicly on X. This is not new evidence or information. FBI asked to test this DNA 2 months ago with the same technology we've always had, when the local sheriff instead sent it to a private lab. Any further developments we will share as soon as appropriate. 2 months. The FBI had a plane on a runway ready to fly DNA to Quantico on night 1, according to FBI Director Kash Patel. That plane did not fly. The DNA went to Florida instead. And for approximately 2 months, the evidence that needed the most advanced forensic technology in American law enforcement sat in a private lab that, by CeCe Moore's own assessment, has never produced a successful rootless hair analysis. 2 months. In the Idaho College murder case, Brian Kohberger's arrest came approximately 6 weeks after the murders. The Moscow police chief brought in 40 FBI agents, used Aram Labs for DNA analysis, and had the forensic infrastructure in place from the beginning. 6 weeks. Nancy Guthrie's rootless hair evidence sat in a Florida laboratory for 2 months before it reached the facility that could actually read it, because the department leading this investigation sent it there first, and did not immediately route it through the federal system that the FBI had been offering since night 1. Former Pima County Undersheriff Rick Castigar told News Nation why this happened. His description of the sheriff's relationship with the FBI. He holds a grudge. He's still P*** edition. A grudge dating to a 2015 to 2016 FBI investigation into civil asset forfeiture at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. 2 months of forensic analysis time potentially lost because of a personal grudge that predates Nancy Guthrie's disappearance by a decade. Once the hair reached the FBI laboratory at Quantico, the next question became, which laboratory would receive it for the advanced rootless hair analysis that only a small number of facilities can perform? CeCe Moore answered that directly when Brian Enton asked her, "I am pretty confident that they will want to use the lab that they have been extremely successful with, which is Astrea. Sending it to Astrea, where there is a proven track record, is by far the safest option." She added the FBI used them for the Gilgo case, so they have a lot of confidence in Astrea. Astrea Forensics is based in San Francisco. It was founded by Dr. Ed Green. It specializes in whole genome sequencing, a method that reads nearly all of a person's DNA, covering the entire genetic code of approximately 3 billion bases. applied to rootless hair. This approach allows scientists to extract the ultra-short DNA fragments inside the hair shaft, piece them together, and build a SNP profile detailed enough for genealogical comparison. The process works in stages. First, the hair is screened. CeCe Moore explained that the FBI is likely first examining the hair's physical characteristics, color, length, texture, to determine whether it could belong to Nancy herself. If the hair is consistent with Nancy's own gray hair, it will not be sent for the expensive SNP analysis. If it is clearly from someone else, a different color, a different texture, that is the signal to proceed. Then the SNP extraction begins. The surface contamination on the hair shaft is cleaned away using protocols developed specifically for forensic rootless hair analysis. The ultra-short DNA fragments inside the shaft are extracted and sequenced. From that sequencing, a profile is built. Once the profile exists, it enters the genealogical phase. CeCe Moore receives what she calls a match list, not a single identification, but a list of distant relatives who share partial DNA with the unknown profile. Third cousins, fourth cousins, people who share a small percentage of genetic material because they share a common ancestor several generations back. From those matches, family trees are built. Branches are extended, cross-referenced with public records, birth certificates, marriage records, census data, obituaries, and triangulated until the lines converge on a small number of individuals who could possibly be the source of the DNA. The names are then handed back to law enforcement. Investigators check them against the case, the geography, the timeline, the 50,000 tips that retired Detective Robbie Meyer has said he believes already contain the suspect's name. That process is what broke the Golden State Killer case. That process is what broke Gilgo Beach. And that process is now underway for the hair recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. CeCe Moore is the lead genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia. She has been doing this work since before it was the technology that made national headlines. She has helped solve dozens of cases that were considered permanently cold. And she has done it 6 separate times using only rootless hair as the starting point. She said excited. But she also said something else that most coverage has avoided. She called it a Hail Mary. Her exact words, "It's again kind of a Hail Mary. Everything is getting to that point, I feel, because so much time has gone by. But you just never know." That is the language of a scientist who has been in this work long enough to know what it looks like when evidence deadens. Who has work cases where the rootless hair turned out to belong to a visitor, a house cleaner, a family member, a service worker who had been in the space weeks before the crime. Nancy Guthrie lived in that home for decades. Many people moved through it. The probability that any single hair recovered from inside the residence belongs specifically to the person who took her is lower than the probability it belongs to someone innocent. Moore was honest about this. She said, "Hopefully, it is from an unknown male that cannot be traced to having been in that home for another reason." And then she said what matters about the upside. You just never know what that one little piece of evidence is that can break a case wide open. The Hail Mary is real. So, is the excitement. Both things are true simultaneously. The technology can work. Whether it works here depends on whether the hair belongs to the right person. That question has one answer, and the FBI is currently working toward it. While the rootless hair is the most visible forensic thread currently in motion, CeCe Moore raised something else in her conversation with Brian Enton that most coverage dismissed and should not have: the flashlight. In the released doorbell footage, the masked individual is seen holding a flashlight in his mouth while he attempts to cover the camera lens with vegetation. He bites down on it to free both hands. He holds it gripped in his teeth while he moves around the porch. He uses both hands to work with the plant material he brought to cover the lens. Saliva accumulates around an object held in the mouth. It transfers to the gloves of whoever handles that object afterward. It transfers to the vegetation those gloves later touch. Saliva is one of the richest sources of DNA in forensic science. Far richer than rootless hair, far easier to analyze, requiring no specialized sequencing technology to extract a full nuclear DNA profile. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer has been making this point for months. She publicly questioned why every leaf and every vine on that porch was not swabbed comprehensively. Moore agreed with her on camera. She said someone had written to her independently to point out exactly this, that the bike flashlight would produce significant saliva, that it would be difficult not to leave biological material behind. She said it is still possible to go back to the home and collect more samples. She said DNA is hardy. She said the welcome mat on the porch, reportedly never collected as evidence, could still hold DNA. Light switches, doorknobs, surfaces the suspect touched while moving through the space. And then she said something that sits at the center of the most quietly damaging decision in this investigation. The crime scene was released within days of Nancy's disappearance. The Pima County Sheriff's Department returned the property to the Guthrie family. The forensic processing was treated as complete. The yellow tape came down. Dr. Casey Jordan, criminologist, addressed this on Brian Enton's National Special. Her exact word, bungled. She said it is very possible that a lot of what investigators needed to know was bungled by releasing the crime scene back to the family within days. The welcome mat that should have been collected, the flower pots that the suspect used to prop open doors containing potential fingerprints and biological material moved since the scene was released. The foliage on the porch that may have held saliva transferred from gloves left to degrade for days before anyone returned with proper sampling tools. The supervisor overseeing this investigation at Pima County Sheriff Department, according to reporting that circulated in the coverage of the case, had never previously investigated a homicide. Not once. The decision about where to route evidence, how long to hold the scene, what to collect and what to leave, those decisions were made by someone making them for the first time on the highest profile missing persons case in the country. This is the moment where the public conversation about this case broke through in a new direction. On a recent episode of her podcast, Khloe in Wonderland, Khloe Kardashian sat down with Crime Junkie podcast host Ashley Flowers to discuss the Nancy Guthrie case. Kardashian said, "Nancy Guthrie, is that not heartbreaking? This is 2026. There is nothing. That is mind-blowing." She said, "I don't believe that there's not one piece of information. They're just not telling us." Flowers said that law enforcement withholding information in active cases is standard practice. That cases that appear stagnant from the outside often have significant activity happening behind closed doors. And then Sheriff Nanos confirmed exactly that. Speaking to Tucson's KOLD, he said, "But it's not done because we got to keep it secret. It's done because we got to protect our case." That statement from Nanos is the most direct he has been about the gap between what the public knows and what investigators know. The secrecy is deliberate. The silence around specific details, like the ring analysis, like the full results of the DNA work, like the status of the surveillance footage cataloging, is not the silence of an investigation that has nothing. It is the silence of an investigation that has something it needs to protect. Retired cold case Sergeant Troy Hillman estimated the public knows approximately 25% of what investigators know. 3/4 of the evidence is being deliberately withheld to protect the integrity of a future prosecution. Khloe Kardashian said, "Mind-blowing." But Nanos and Hillman are saying the same thing from the other direction. The case is not empty. It is protected. On June 23, 2026, 3 weeks from now, Derek Colella, 42, of Hawthorne, California, will stand trial at the federal courthouse in Tucson. Colella is charged with transmitting a demand for ransom in interstate commerce. The grand jury indictment details what he did. On February 4th, 4 days after Nancy disappeared, he sent 2 text messages to 2 members of the Guthrie family asking, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." Colella told investigators he was following the case on television and pulled the family's contact information from a website online. He is not believed to be connected to the actual abduction, but his trial is a marker. U.S. Attorney Timothy Crochane stated at the time of his arrest, "The Department of Justice will protect victims and families at all costs, and grief profiteers will be held accountable." Phoenix FBI Special Agent in charge Hiram Yank added, "To those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from the situation, we will investigate and ensure you are held accountable for your actions." The Colella case came together in under 24 hours, according to the DOJ. That is the speed at which federal law enforcement can move when the evidence is clean and the target is accessible. The investigation into the actual abduction is moving at a different pace, not because investigators are not working, but because the evidence is more complex, the target is unknown, and the forensic path runs through technology that takes months, not hours. The Colella trial on June 23rd will be the first courtroom proceeding connected to this case. It will not produce answers about what happened to Nancy, but it will demonstrate publicly that the federal machinery built around this case is operating, and that the DOJ takes the exploitation of this family seriously. Day 121, June 2nd, 2026. Nancy Guthrie still missing. No named suspect. No arrest. The hair recovered from inside Nancy's home, sent to Florida first, transferred to FBI Quantico. Astria Forensics in San Francisco believed to be involved in analysis. CeCe Moore, the genealogist who has solved 6 cases from rootless hair alone, said excited. Also said, Hail Mary. Both are true. The FBI asked for the DNA 2 months before they receive it. Ben Williamson confirmed this publicly. Kash Patel said a plane was on a runway night 1. It did not fly. The saliva from the flashlight held in the suspect's mouth may not have been fully collected before the crime scene was released. CeCe Moore and Jennifer Coffindaffer both flagged this publicly. Some samples may still be recoverable. Nanos told KOLD the investigation is withholding information specifically to protect the case, not because there is nothing, because there is something worth protecting. Colella trial, June 23rd, Federal Courthouse, Tucson. Not connected to the actual abduction. Khloe Kardashian said, mind-blowing. Nano said, protect our case. Both are describing the same gap from opposite sides of it. Reward, $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. Tip line FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Tips.fbi.gov Crime Stoppers, 88 Crime, 520-882-7463. CeCe Moore has solved 6 cases with nothing but rootless hair. 6 times, evidence that every previous investigator had filed away as useless produced a name. 6 times, the technology built in a Santa Cruz laboratory by a geneticist who refused to accept the limit gave grieving families something they had been told they would never have. She heard about the hair in Nancy Guthrie's home, and she said excited, that word carries 121 days of silence inside it. It carries the 2 months that hair sat in a Florida lab while the FBI waited. It carries the crime scene that was released before everything was collected. It carries the 50,000 tips and the 241 to 0 no confidence vote and the Corvette driving away and the sheriff who said really great. All of that is real. All of those failures are documented. And at the end of all of it, there is a hair in a federal laboratory being analyzed by the same team that broke Gilgo Beach, being processed by the most powerful forensic genealogy technology that exists in 2026. CeCe Moore said, keep our fingers crossed. She said, hope this finally brings her home. She did not say identifies the suspect. She said, brings her home. That is what this case is actually about. If you know anything about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Submit directly at tips.fbi.gov. Crime Stoppers, 88 Crime, 520-882-7463. The reward is $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. One call could be the one that changes everything. This video is based entirely on publicly available information from named, verified sources, including Brian Enton's April 16, 2026 report on Brian Enton Investigates. CeCe Moore's interviews with News Nation and Fox News Digital on April 16 to 21st, 2026 via Parade, Men's Journal, IB Times, and Fox News. Ben Williamson's April 21, 2026 X post via Fox News Digital. Kash Patel's statements via Sean Hannity and Public Record. Khloe Kardashian's Khloe in Wonderland podcast episode as reported by Fox, News, Complex, and The Sun. Sheriff Nanos, KOLD interview. Confirmed reporting from CBS News, Fox News Digital, Newsweek, Men's Journal, Parade, News Nation, Yahoo News, TV Insider, and IB Times. No conclusions have been drawn about any individual's guilt or innocence. All persons mentioned are presumed innocent unless charged and convicted by a court of law. The Guthrie family, including all siblings and spouses, have been cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and are not suspects.